Awesome. All right. As Katrina said, thank you so much for all of you guys for coming tonight. We're super excited to go over Hawthorne Lofts and just talk a little bit about this new apartment complex that is going to be coming out in Salem. My name is Carolina Scholl. I work for Peabody Properties, the managing company. I have been with Peabody for 6 years, and I've been working with North Shore CDC for about 2.5 years now. And to my left, we have Katrina Pavetto. She is the Vice President of Compliance for Peabody, and she has been with us for about 3 years now. I'm just going to go over a quick disclaimer. Peabody Properties does not discriminate in the selection of applicants on the basis of race, color, national origin, disability, age, ancestry, children, familial status, genetic information, marital status, public assistance recipiency, religion, sex, sexual orientation, gender, identity, veteran or military status, or any other basis prohibited by law. And any persons with disabilities are entitled to request a reasonable accommodation in rules, policies, practices, or services, or to request a reasonable modification in the housing when such accommodations or modifications may be necessary to afford persons with disabilities an equal opportunity to use and enjoy the housing. I wish I could memorize all of that, but it's a lot. All right, so now we're going to go on to a quick overview about Hawthorne Lofts and what's going to be discussed today. So we're going to talk about the timeline. It's going to be mainly Katrina today, but she will be going over start to finish where we are today, what it looks like on timeline to be moving in, the lottery process, after what happens after your application goes in, how the lottery is processed, and then also the interview process and eligibility questions, requirements, what are we asking for, what counts as income, what counts as assets, all of the fun stuff Katrina will go over. And then now we're just going to talk about the owners, the developers, and the property management company a little bit. So North Shore Community Development Coalition's mission is to invest in the neighborhoods to create a thriving community and creating affordable housing community and also to the public art. North Shore CDC was founded in 2011. They are based obviously here in Salem. This is their home office. So it's great to have, an owner and a developer that is developing in the city that you live in. Nothing better than having that. They have developed about 475 affordable apartments in the community, which is wonderful, and they're creating more, bringing in more now, with the artist preference and our sister site, which is for 62 and up. So their mission is very clear and they just continue to build up the community. So the management company is Peabody Properties. We have been in business for almost 50 years. We clearly know multifamily management, and through a wide range of services, we manage a plethora of different kinds of apartments, multifamily, senior housing, condominiums, and also even veteran housing. We have about 15,000 units, I want to say, that Peabody manages. That puts us in I think, one of the largest property management companies in the Eastern United States. We are very big with working with our clients and working with, our residents to make sure that everybody has a safe home. Our biggest, I feel like, slogan is that we put the home in housing. We really do try to make sure that we work with everyone to make sure that they're safe and that it's as if it's our own homes that we're living in. So I think I'm going to pass it off to Katrina.
Sure.
There's not much else to say about Peabody, so.
No, absolutely. Thank you, Carolina. All right, so we're going to get into the fun part, the conversation about Hawthorne Lofts, which if you live in the area or if you are in Salem a bit, maybe you've seen the construction, starting with just the general location. So the actual physical address of Hawthorne Lofts is 13 Hawthorne Boulevard. If that doesn't mean a whole lot to you, it's right near the Hawthorne Hotel, if that does mean something to you. So it is literally half a block from Salem Commons. It is right in the heart of everything that Salem has to offer. When I looked up the location, I audibly said to myself in my office, oh, that's a great location, right? It's a beautiful building. It's going to be beautifully renovated. It's being converted from a school, and it's going to retain some of the original architecture and features of of the school building while it's being going through its adaptive reuse. It is a total of 29 apartment homes with a mix of studio apartments, 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom units. The property is unique in that it has an artist preference on it, which is a really fantastic component to Hawthorne Lofts, and we will get into that in a little bit more detail later on in our time together today. And it has artist studio space with an auditorium and recording pods. It's a really unique, really cool building. It does also have income restrictions on it, which we will again go over in addition to the artist preference. So we'll get there. Just hang on, but we'll pause at the end of each of these sections for questions with additional time at the end if there's anything we didn't cover or if I didn't explain something well and you need me to say it again or differently. All right, so let's talk about location, right? So I mentioned it's about half a block from Salem Common. It's right near the Hawthorne Hotel. It is in the heart of everything that Salem has to offer, right? All of our little shops and dining establishments and really that sense of community and in the middle of everything. I can't speak highly enough about where this location is. If you have an opportunity, it's just a few blocks from here. If you don't know where it is, plug it into your phone, go take a little walk, and you will see it's just really in the middle of everything. So let's talk about the community and the apartment breakdowns. I said it's a mix of studios, 1-bedrooms and 2-bedrooms. So it's actually a total of 7 studio units, 18 1-bedroom units, and 4 2-bedroom units. It is a 4-story building, so there are garden units and then floors 1, 2, and 3. And in addition to in that mix, we do also have 2 mobility accessible units. If there are people who require mobility features, lowered cabinets, turning radius, things like that, grab bars, and 1 sensory accessible unit, which is for the hearing impaired, meaning if you need strobe lights for your smoke alarms, those types of things. So that's the breakdown of the apartments in terms of number of units and bedroom sizes. Let's talk about the community amenities, a lot of them, right? So there is on-site laundry, which is always fantastic. Professional on-site management with 24-hour maintenance. It is a smoke-free community. It is elevator access and a ramp entry. It has accessible common spaces. I already mentioned it is steps away from the Commons, the Peabody Essex Museum, the Punto Urban Art Museum, the restaurants, the shopping, the waterfront, everything fantastic about Salem, as well as being close to the commuter rail station and the bus lines. There is a 5,000 square foot space in an auditorium with studio pods for the artists to use. And you'll see some renderings of that. It is really cool. Secure access. And then as far as parking goes, because you are in the middle of Salem, every resident, every household is going to get 1 parking pass for the Museum Place garage. So there is going to be parking available, which is a unique find when you are living in an urban environment. The next slide shows some renderings, and I know it's a little far away, so I have some printed copies. Megan, if you could advance the slide for me. There we go. Has some renderings of that auditorium space with a stage, with the artist pods to create. Again, it's a really unique environment, and it seems like San Diego may be bringing over those pictures as well to reinforce everything that we are saying about how cool the space is. So a little bit about the specific apartment homes. At Hawthorne Lofts, heat and hot water is included in your rent. You are just responsible for the electric on the unit. It is electric stoves and air conditioning. There is air conditioning, right? Another plus, right? When you're talking about converting old spaces into apartments, that's one that finding the space for it. I give Jennifer and her team a lot of credit for figuring that one out. There are going to be very modern kitchens, including quartz countertops and stainless steel appliances, hardwood floors in many of the units, big, beautiful, oversized windows, and every unit will be high-speed internet and cable ready. It's not included, but the units will be ready for it. The next slide are just some renderings of what the interiors of the apartments will look like, just to give you an idea. Obviously, the building is still under construction, so we don't have real pictures to show you yet, but this is a pretty good indication of just how beautiful the apartments will be once they're done. So I mentioned before that this is an income restricted property. So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about what that means so that everybody here can understand where you might fall into the restrictions that we have. So we have studio units that are available for rent at $1,610 per month. In order to qualify for that apartment at that rent, you would need to be making at least $48,300 per year. That's the minimum income required to be able to afford that level of rent. The top end of what a household can make in order to qualify depends on the number of people residing in the apartment. So if it's just you and you want to rent a studio apartment, the upper end of what you could make is $69,480. So you need to make at least $48,300 and not more than $69,480 in order to qualify for that unit. If you are looking to rent a 1-bedroom apartment, the 1-bedroom rent is $1,725 per month. And that has a minimum income. You need to be making at least $51,750. And then again, the top end, if it's just you living in that apartment, would still be that $69,480. So it's a window of about $18,000. If it's 2 people living in that 1-bedroom apartment, the upper end of that would be $79,440. We also have 1-bedroom apartments available for rent at $1,975 per month. And the minimum income there would be $59,250 to support that rent. And then again, the top end of that is based on number of people. So if it's just one person in the apartment, you need to be making at least $59,250 and not more than $69,480. If it's 2 people, that $59,250 is still the minimum because you just have to be able to afford the rent. And then the top end of that would be that same $79,440. Hawthorne Lofts also does have the benefit of project-based subsidized units, which are a little bit different in terms of, one, the rent is not predetermined. The rent on those units is actually based on your income. So if your income is 0, then the rent is 0. So there's no minimum income requirement for those units because what you pay is based on your income. So the project-based subsidized units have no minimum income. They do have an upper limit, however. So for one person moving into that unit, that upper limit would be $34,740. 2 people, it's $39,720. 3 people would be $44,670, and 4 people would be $49,620. So again, the subsidized units have no minimum, just the upper cap, whereas the apartments that have the predetermined rent amounts have both a lower end and an upper end. Okay. All right, so any questions on what we've gone over so far? I know especially those income limits can be a little bit complicated. They're complicated for us even when we have to present them. So no question is unreasonable.
Different applications for the project phase versus the regular one, or you just submit one?
That's a fantastic question. So the question for anybody on Zoom who couldn't hear it was, is it a different application for the project-based apartments versus the ones with the predetermined rent amount? The answer is no. It's one application, and add to it, Hawthorne Lofts actually has a sister building over on Federal Street that's opening, and you can fill out one application and apply for both of those properties if you're interested and are eligible. We're just here talking about Hawthorne Lofts today, but it's just one. What happens is, when you complete the application, you're going to sort of tell us approximately what your gross annual income is. And then when we go through the lottery process, we will review that, and then we'll sort of slot our applications into buckets based on where people qualify, if that makes sense. And then we'll go through the vetting process to actually review that with you and get all the necessary documentation to support. Here's the calculation of what your income is to verify it all before making the final determination. Good question.
Is there anyone in the Zoom chat that would like to take yourself off mute to ask any questions?
Okay. Yes. Good question. Let me just repeat it for the folks on Zoom. So the question was, is there an annual review process? And the answer is yes. That's the short answer. I mean, the longer answer is the income limits that we're talking about today are what is applicable at the time that you move into the property. Once you move in, there's this mantra in our housing world that says once qualified, always qualified. So if all of a sudden your income spikes remarkably, we're going to have a conversation. We are not in the business of displacing people. At no point will the conversation be held, you're making too much, you need to move out. Okay, so that never needs to be a concern, but it is a requirement of the funding sources on this property that we do an annual review of people's income, assets, that your family composition hasn't changed, those sorts of things. Good question. Nothing else? Megan, nothing in the chat?
Nothing in the chat.
Okay, great. All right, so we're going to quick go over the timeline. This is a very short section, starting with the application period. So the application period for this property started on March 31st and will be open for 60 days. It closes, or longer than 60 days for this property, excuse me. It actually doesn't close for Hawthorne Lofts until July 11th. So plenty of time to get your applications in. And because this is a lottery process, it's not first come, first serve. It doesn't matter if you submitted your application at 12:01 a.m. on March 31st or 11:59 p.m. on July 11th, right? We're all going to go into the same categories. We're all going through the same sort. So if you are submitting a paper application, which we'll go over how to get one of those as well. If you are submitting a paper application, it needs to be postmarked on or before July 11th. So we may not get it until July 14th, 17th. We all know how the mail is, right? I know they're committed to doing better, but we'll see. It just needs to be postmarked when we get it stamped by the post office with July 11th. So from there, once the application period closes, the lottery is actually going to be held on July 31st. It is scheduled already, and we will be sending out the link for it. It's an online lottery. We'll go over that process here shortly. The lottery will be held on July 11th. We will begin the resident selection process. Then in July 31st, excuse me, we will begin the resident selection process in August and look forward to welcoming our new residents to Hawthorne Lofts in the fall of 2025. Right around Halloween. So, good luck with the moving trucks. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be good. We're gonna figure it out together. It's gonna be okay, I promise. Okay, so let's talk. Oh, I'm sorry. Any questions about the timeline?
I do have a question in the chat. Can I apply if I am in another state? And that is a fantastic question. I can give you a quick answer. Yes, absolutely. You can apply from any state. You be subject to exactly the same interview process. And the best part is we have so much technology these days. We'll be able to help you from your state as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Megan. All right, so let's go through the lottery process and how this actually works. What are the mechanics of it? So beginning with the applications are available from March 31st, again, through July 11th. That is the window, right? Let's commit that to memory. We want to make sure if you want to be included in the lottery that we get your application. Our preferred method for applications is online. You can go to livehawthornelofts.com to fill out an online application. And the benefit to you doing that is when you hit submit, you sort of get that instant gratification of, oh, they got it, right? You're going to get an email back from a job form that says, we've received your application. You're going to scroll. It's going to be really long. It's going to have a lot of words on it, but that's going to be the confirmation that we have actually received your application. You'll get one as well if you submit a paper application. If that's your preferred method to submit, that's fine. Just it's going to come differently. It doesn't give that instant gratification feel. If you do prefer to fill out a paper application, you can download one from the website, livehawthornelofts.com. You can request one via email at hawthornelofts@peabodyproperties.com. We'll send one back to you. You can call us at 781-952-8201 and let us know that you would like one and arrange to pick it up, or if you want us to mail it to you, that's also totally fine. If you want to request that we send you one in writing, you can send us a letter. Care of our corporate offices in Braintree, Or you could pick one up in person right here at 106 Lafayette or a few doors down at 96 Lafayette as well.
What, other way? This is 96.
Oh,
It's okay.
sorry. Right here at 96 or a few doors down at 106 Lafayette Street. Like, why are they laughing at me? And I've been talking all day. Okay. All right, so when it comes to filling out the applications, the online application, again, I said it's preferred and it's going to help navigate you through the required fields. So we're going to make sure, absolutely certain, that we get all of the information that we need to get your application submitted. The challenge with the paper application, right, is it's a lot of pages and a lot of blanks to be filled in. So we do ask that all of the blanks be filled in. But we also understand that it is many pages and a lot of the information might not make sense if you don't work in housing all day. So if you have questions, feel free to call us. We want you to be successful. We want to accept your application. So let us help you and let us help guide you through the process. Applications that are received that are incomplete will not be eligible for the lottery. So just something to be aware of. That said, throughout the entire process, if for some reason you're found ineligible, you're denied, you forgot to show up for your appointment, so we took you off the list, you will have opportunities to appeal. All right, so please don't get a letter and just assume that's the end of it. Reach out to us. Communication is key throughout this for all of us. And then all of the communication about lottery and application numbers and where you are on the waiting list and all of that thing will be in writing, and it will come via your preferred method. You're going to tell us, do you want to get it in email? Do you want to get a letter? That's how you're going to receive it. So the lottery process it's literally just a randomization of all the applications we receive. So when you submit your application, it will be assigned an application number, and that's to anonymize the information, right? We don't want to publicize people's names or addresses, right? We want to take away all the personal identifiers. So we assign an application number, and the lottery, we're literally going to log into a Zoom like this, click a button, and it's going to be done. So it goes very fast. There is no benefit to being on the Zoom and being present for the lottery. It doesn't increase your chances. And that's sort of the bottom point there, is you do not need to be present at the lottery to be eligible. Once the lottery happens, you're going to receive a follow-up communication letting you know where your lottery number. Were you number 1? Were you number 14? Were you number 300? You will get that. After the lottery closes, then we go to work, and we have to do this massive sort of slotting everybody into those various buckets I talked about based on your self-reported income, and then assigning any preferences like the artist preference that we're going to talk about here soon, and understand fully where people fall. And then we will be off to the races trying to get people into apartments. All right, so we're going to talk now actually about the artist preference, and I'm so happy that San Diego is here in case he can provide any answers to additional questions, because he's going to take on the most of that work. We're going to do the ugly part. He's going to do the fun part. I think it's fun. So some key factors about the artist preference. So the head of household is the person that needs to be the artist. Okay, so if you are applying with somebody else, when you submit that application to be eligible for the preference, please make sure that the person who is the artist is being named as the head of household. An artist broadly is defined as someone who has a commitment and or participation in the arts beyond that of a hobby. I may love to sing in the car and in the shower. That doesn't make me an artist, right? So it has to be beyond a hobby. That said, the artist's income does not need to be derived partially or completely from their work as an artist, right? And we're going to go through some of like the more in-depth definitions of, and I love it because it is very, very inclusive. But that's a key point to the preference, is your income doesn't need to come just or even partially from your work as an artist. So let's get into some of those more nitty gritty. What do we mean when we talk about artists? It really is all encompassing. We're talking about the fine arts. When you think of painting, drawing, sculpting, mixed media, printmaking, book art, those sorts of things, along with imaginative works, right? Video editing, film, digital media, literature, costume design, photography, architecture, right? A lot of things qualify as art. Functional art, right? Like jewelry, rugs, screens and grates, furniture, toys, quilts, like actual tangible functional art, performance art, singers, musicians, dancers, actors, performance artists, and then culturally significant practice, which is one that I'm a huge fan of. This would mean a designer, a craft person, a teacher, or an administrator who's using their expertise to promote or propagate art in the community. So a very broad definition of people who may be eligible for the artist preference. Now, the eligibility determination of that is where San Diego's group comes in, and there are a multitude of different ways to determine that eligibility, and one of which could be evidence of formal training. Maybe you have a BFA in arts, or you have some sort of degree or certification. A pay stub, if you are earning some of your income from your art, that would also suffice. Marketing materials for the sale or viewing of your work. Right? Perhaps you're a performance artist and you are participating in Salem Arts Fest coming up in early June, right? Marketing materials showing that you are performing. And also a third-party letter documenting that you are in fact an artist. So that's the end of this section. I'm going to pause and ask, what questions do you have? And if they're about the artist preference, we're going to talk to this guy a few seats down from me. What questions do you have? Yes.
Of those lists you just met, as an example, I'm a working artist, but I have no degree in art. Do I need to have a degree, or do
Do you want me to answer that, or do you?
one of those spots?
Wait, can I repeat it for the folks on Zoom?
Please.
Okay, so the question was, somebody in the audience is a working artist, does not have a formal degree in art. Is that a requirement to be eligible for the preference? Do you want to take, you want me to?
I mean, by my definition center, I would say no, because it's a lot of trades and a lot of crafts, like you're thinking about folk art, those are things that you learn as you're kind of going into, like, you're apprenticing to become a woodmaker or a basket weaver. And then, there's a lot of arts programs that don't really teach you how to become a basket weaver or a craftsman. And so I would say that, that's not a requisite.
Yes, the list that I gave to was also an or list, not an and list.
Yeah.
So you don't have to check all of the boxes to be eligible. Yes, I apologize. I wasn't clear on that. It's an or list, right? So if you have evidence that you are working as an artist, right, and you can provide us with the marketing materials and items that you have, then, and I think there may also be a portfolio review or some other processes through this preference.
Yeah. And part of the reason why it's so broad and there's a lot of the ors is trying to reduce the barriers for artists to be able to apply to get into this place. And then also to recognize that, like, Winterborn Art Museum is a mural focused museum, but that there's a lot of artistic disciplines that are here in Salem, North Shore, Boston, Massachusetts. And we want to bring in as many different types of artists to work inside of this space. So that can be a very dynamic, creative space. And then there's, that just kind of strengthens the community that we're going to be creating here at this auditorium.
Good question. Thank you. Thank you for that.
I actually have another question. Could you talk a little bit more about this wonderful space that I saw the images of?
Yeah.
Another section.
Yeah, certainly. So there's a couple colored sheets that are around. I think this is barely what we had in large scale. But yeah, so it's a 5,000 square foot auditorium space. I mean, I think a lot of folks have actually potentially been in the space. The Boys and Girls Club used to operate out of there. North Shore CDC once held information sessions in this particular auditorium. So in 2019, North Shore CDC, I've only been working for the organization for 2 years. They had a couple of, they put out a survey where we were asking artists to respond to this so we could identify what their needs were for their live space, but also their workspace. So the results from all of these surveys and then 2 follow focus groups are what are helping us determine what sort of features and items are going to be going out to the build out of this particular space. So we've received 2 grants, one from Mass Cultural Council and another one from Mass Development. Those are actually funding the build up of this particular space. So with the qualitative data that came out, like there was significant, I think there's 83% of the respondents were women who responded and participated in this. A lot of things they were asking for is like for safety and security, wanting to have quiet spaces within there. And so that's kind of what led us to decide to put in 10 micro studios that are going to be inside of this space that have lofts that are quiet spaces that folks can kind of go into, still be part of this community, but then also have areas where they can focus in and leave things kind of in status. A number of the participants in these surveys also were worked with media, so they were like musicians, or they like created podcasts. Or they recorded music, and so we're gonna have two soundproof studios that are gonna be on the old stage of the auditorium. And so that way, like, if, anybody who works with media, who has those sort of like, practices, then they have a quiet space they can work in. That's not gonna be, creating too much noise for the residents that live in the basement level that's underneath the auditorium, or for the other artists that are working inside the auditorium space. So we'll have like 10 micro studios that are gonna be 90 square feet. They all have like lofts. You'll have to be provided with a desk, a table, and shelving. The two soundproof rooms, which also have some soundproof furniture built into it as well. And then, as you can see in one of the images, there's a lofted area. And so that's going to be kind of like a hangout space, a workspace where folks can like work on computers. They can have private meetings. The entire auditorium is also going to be ADA accessible. So there's as you mentioned, there's an elevator in the building that's going to access all 4 floors. But for the stage, which is elevated, there's going to be a vertical lift there as well. So that way, say if somebody who's, uses the walker, use the cane, use the wheelchair, they can also access those soundproof studios as well. There's also going to be a full kitchen in there. Are any folks here familiar with our Espacio space on Commerce Street? Okay, so we're gonna have a full kitchen similar to what we have in there. So that way, we're trying to think about like how the space is going to be used going forward. Like once it's inhabited, like maybe we'll have communal meals with the artists that live inside of there. Maybe you're gonna host like open studios twice a year so that folks can kind of come in, the general public who won't be in there on the day-to-day basis, but they can see what all y'all are producing in your individual artistic practices. We're trying to make the space as dynamic as possible for anybody who lives in the residences. Go ahead. Right.
And then the common space, is there going to be space for the common space set up there, or is it sort of pop up for the
Yeah.
Can I just repeat it?
Maybe.
Okay, sorry, just for the folks on Zoom, in case you couldn't hear, thank you for the patience in that. The question was how it's going to work, having 10 micro studios, and if they would be assigned or shared spaces, and then if artists choose to work in the common area, if their belongings could be left in that area, if they would be secure, sort of what that expectation is. Is that?
Yeah, so the 10 micro studios, those are only going to be first available to the artists that live in the building. So if you live in the building, then those will be made available. So say, if, only 7 are like rented additionally by the residents live in the building. The additional 3 we're going to make available to artists that do not live inside of the building. But our hope is that all 10 are utilized by residents in the building. Only the residents are going to have access to the auditorium on a day-to-day basis. So it's going to be a very secure space. There's also going to be lockers in one of the hallway leading from the residences into the auditorium. So if somebody doesn't get one of the micro studios, that's a space you can lock up the equipment that's in there. There's going to be work tables throughout this entire space as well. So that way it's, someone can like work on a space on a large work area, depending on what their needs are, and like make use of that. Yeah. Does that answer most of your questions?
The soundproof studios, will they have equipment or basically soundproof?
Thank you. The question for anybody on Zoom who couldn't hear is about the soundproof studios and whether they would come with any equipment or if they are just going to be soundproof studios.
Yeah. So yes, yesterday I had a meeting with I guess Edwin Cabrera. He's the executive director of the Lynn Music Foundation.
Yeah, Sunny, you're.
Can you speak up just a little?
Yeah, certainly. So yesterday I had a meeting with Edwin Cabrera. He's the executive director for the Lynn Music Foundation. And they have like recording facilities down in their space. And so one thing that we were talking about in our conversation is consulting with them so they can kind of make recommendations for us for like the best use of best equipment that we can provide in those particular spaces. So one of the things we talked about is providing like what do they call podcasting kits that artists can check out. So then you have one less barrier that's preventing, like you have to overcome in order for you to like say run your own podcast. So we're going to be working with Edwin to kind of figure out what are the tools that we can provide for those 2 spaces, so that if someone's a musician, they just want to go in there and record their vocals, or someone who wants to record a podcast, or someone wants to go and like mix music or create like sound kind of noise sort of art in that space, that you could potentially will have like the equipment to kind of like get yourself going. But if there's anything more specialized than that, then that would be like on the artist to like provide those particular things. Thank you.
We do have a question in the chat. We're asking, can the third-party letter be from a museum or gallery from another country?
What was the question again?
The question was, can the third-party letter be from a gallery or a museum from a different country?
Yeah, I don't see why not, but I think there's a restriction, correct, that the individuals applying have to live in the United States, is that correct?
Yes, this would need to be somebody's primary residence,
Mhm.
absolutely. But I think the preference is just from a qualified source,
Yeah,
right? The third-party letter just needs to be from a qualified source. So I suppose if somebody has their works on view in a museum or a gallery overseas or a different country, which could be Canada, right? Then that would certainly qualify.
yeah,
Yeah.
I would say so, because if you think about the Pinto Art Museum, a lot of the muralists that we have on display are from, like Colombia, Spain, Mexico, Central America. And so like, we would qualify as like the source, even though they're international. So I think it should work in the vice versa way as well.
Thank you.
Yes.
Just want to ask, what are your like projections of numbers of applicants do you foresee in this process?
Good question. Good question. So the question, in case you couldn't hear, is number of applications that we anticipate during this process. I can tell you as of today, we have 131 applicants for the two properties, right? So I mentioned there's a sister property over on Federal Street. So across the two properties, we have 131 applications. It can be very hit or miss. Right, so we had a property open last year in Salem where we received, I think, about 3,000 applications. We've also had properties down in Boston where we've only received 800. So it's hard to say. And with both buildings having unique characteristics, the artist preference here, which if you haven't noticed, we're all very excited about and we're happy to talk about it. And then the building on Federal Street has a 62 and older requirement to it. We may actually see lower numbers of applications because people might be like, oh, well, I'm not 62 and I'm not an artist. We don't want people to self-select, but sometimes they see that and think they wouldn't be otherwise eligible. So it's hard for us to say, but 11 days in, we have 131. That's sort of par for the course. When an application period first opens, you have a big spike in applications. You get a bunch that come in and then it sort of like tapers off as you near the end of the application period. It's really hard to project them. I wish I could give you a better answer, like, yep, we're definitely going to get,
I just had, wanted to ask about that. And then the process itself, I'm still not quite clear, like, I can't visualize it. Like, so you have all these applications and you kind of narrow it down by a certain date, or do you narrow it down after the lottery? Like you qualify before the lottery and then you enter the lottery.
Mhm.
And then that you choose a program on the computer. Is that what you do?
Yeah.
And then what happens? That's the kind of.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So before we had randomizing software, and the question was about the mechanics of the lottery process. So before we had lottery software, and you can find videos like this online, it was bingo balls, right? Every application is given a number and it was put into a bingo ball roller and it was drawn out being like, and it would say, number one on the lottery is application number 1052. And you'd be like, yes, right? And then it would be, okay, the person who is number 57 on the list is application number 3, right? So it's totally random. That's why getting your application in on March 31st or July 11th doesn't matter because you have the same chances of being drawn. What happens then, even though you came out, you applied 1052, you were lottery number 1, I applied number 3 and I was 57, but I have that artist preference. So I actually go above you. So we draw it out that way. And what we do first is we have to go through all the applications that have that artist preference. They'll be vetted for the eligibility of the preference and then get to
So number one doesn't have artist preferences, what you're
I'm assuming you don't.
as an example.
Yep,
Okay, so
Yep.
then number 50 has preference over that.
yep. That's right.
Wouldn't
And
number one already have been disqualified if they didn't have artist preference, like to not make the lottery? Do you know what I'm saying?
good question. So the question was, if the person who gets drawn as number one doesn't have the artist preference, wouldn't they have been disqualified? No, because it's a preference. It's not a requirement.
Oh, all right.
Is that helpful? So then what we do is we draw all the bingo balls, right? In theory, going back to like the old school way. And then we've got, here's number one, number two, number three, number four, but then mixed in there, we have people who have the artist preference. So it could be number 3, number 11, number 12. They're going to sort of go above the applicants that don't have that artist preference. Is that helpful? Okay.
Yeah.
If I am not explaining that well, or if I need to say it different, like let me know, because it's
definitely
complicated.
clarified
Okay.
the whole process.
Okay, good. All right, good. Happy to talk more if needed. So let's talk about the income, the interview process and the eligibility requirements. So we're going to start just with the basics, right? The basics are you have to go through the application process. We can't enter you into the lottery. We can't consider you for an apartment with us if you don't go through the process. Then there is going to be the artist preference determination, which you're going to be partnered with San Diego and people to determine the eligibility for the preference. And then a high level overview of how we determine eligibility to live at the property. We do run credit and criminal background checks and a review of rental history or personal references, depending on your individual situation. We also calculate your total gross household income and assets, and then we review for student status. Because of the funding that is on the property, because of the funding on the property, there are student restrictions, whether it's full-time, whether it's part-time, there are certain exceptions. So we just need you to tell us whether or not you're a student and let us figure out if you meet any of the exceptions. So about 14 days after the lottery, after we've done all the sort and figuring out who has the preference and what bucket people need to go into based on what you told us about your income, we're going to start sending out what we call invitations for interview. So starting at the top of each of the waiting lists, we will send out invitations saying, congratulations, we'd like you to come in for an applicant interview. And that's when we sit down together and we actually review in depth what your income profile is for your household. We ask that all adult household members be present during an interview. We prefer it at the same time. It's just easier for everybody. But if for some reason you need to come separately, that's fine. But all adult household members do have to go through the interview process and bring documentation that's requested. We're not going to go through that list today. It will be included in your invitation to attend an interview. And when you schedule the interview with us, we will send it out again. We'll be looking for things like proof of what your income is, right? Your most recent pay stubs, proof of your assets, bank statements, supporting documentation as we go through this vetting process. If you make an appointment for an interview with us and you have to cancel or you can't make it, please call us at least 24 hours in advance. It's primarily so that we know you're still interested. If you just simply don't show up, we assume you're not interested. It's considered a voluntary withdrawal and we'll take your name off of the waiting list, even if you are still interested. That said, we understand things happen. And I said, every step of the way, you'll have an opportunity to appeal. So emergencies happen, life happens. If you made the appointment and all of a sudden you have to go out of state because something happened and we're not top of your brain to cancel an appointment, reach out to us, right? Communication is just the key to getting through this and getting you into your new home. So I mentioned that all adults need to attend an interview. All persons age 18 and older will be subject to a credit and criminal background check. And that includes a review of the lifetime sex offender registration list, as well as a rental history and personal references as may be required if you don't have rental history. All of the claimed income and assets. So you tell us, yep, I'm working. Yes, I have a bank account. Yes, I have some stocks. We're going to verify that. So our first attempt to verify is usually with the source. So you say, I'm working and here's where I work. We're going to have you sign a form. We're going to send it to your employer and wait for it to come back. In the event they don't return it to us for some reason, that's why we ask you to bring the pay stubs in during your interview, because we can use those as backup once we show we've made the attempts to actually get the independent verification. As we go through this process, I mentioned there were income windows, right? If you are outside that window, you don't make enough money, or we calculate you as having made too much money and we deem you ineligible, you will have an opportunity to appeal. Okay, these calculations can definitely get a little hairy, particularly for tipped workers, things like that. Or if you work in like a gig economy job, like Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, those types of things, it can get a little hairy. So you definitely will have the opportunity to appeal if we deem you ineligible for income reasons. Yes.
As an artist, we apply for grants.
Mhm.
And sometimes they're 6 months out before we know whether or not we get that grant. How would we reflect that in the application?
That's a fantastic question. So for anybody on Zoom, as artists, you often apply for grants, and that can be 6 months out from when you apply to when you are notified or even receive the money of that you've been approved or that you get the grant. Is that fair? Or declined, or yeah, for sure. That's a fantastic question, because we do ask as part of the interview process, do you anticipate any changes to your household income in the next 12 months? So when it comes time to, when you get to the end of the year, are you considered self-employed? Does that count towards self-employment earnings? Are you filing that way?
It depends if I get the grant.
Yes, if you get the grant, do you file that way as being self-employed?
Yes, but
Yeah.
sometimes the grant money also goes out to other individuals that are supporting the grant shipment.
Yes, for sure. So we'll review that if it happens. My inclination is, if you've just submitted an application where it's not guaranteed, we'd be more inclined to not consider it as part of your household income. Or we may, if it sort of means the difference between qualifying or not, along with how far along into the grant process that you are, and how, sort of reviewing the likelihood of artists receiving that grant, which, I think there's statistics around as you're applying for grants, how many people get it, the likelihood, that sort of thing. So it's definitely a highly individualized.
Yeah, right, Sam, and there could be other coming up,
Mhm.
August or September, I
Yep.
applied for this grant, and it's unknown until that. Okay.
Absolutely, yes. Yep, the question was on the application, be upfront. Yes, always, absolutely, be upfront. And because if you aren't, and then we find out, we're gonna turn around and say you didn't tell us, right? So we just want all the cards on the table, like, let us navigate it together. We're gonna figure it out. Yes.
I did want to ask my question. So if you are, reporting the income on your income tax, let's say it was a $6,000 grant, you wouldn't necessarily report, your W-1040 income wouldn't necessarily be 6,000, right? So there would have to be some adjustment.
Yes. Yes, that's exactly right. So for anybody who couldn't hear, just a clarifying question, if you do receive that grant, and let's say it's $6,000, that may not necessarily be what gets reported on your income taxes. Yes, so if you are self-employed, and this sort of goes back to that question, what we look at and what we consider income, and thank you, Megan, for throwing up the income slide, is net income from your business. Right, so the grant may be $6,000, but you may have spent $7,000. So your net income is actually zero, right? So that's what we're looking at for anybody who is self-employed, whether that is as an artist, or if you are an Uber driver, a Lyft driver, DoorDash delivery, right? Instacart, they're 1099 employees. That's all considered self-employment. When it comes to self-employment, we are looking at strictly the net income from the business. Yes. Thank you. Other sources of income, right, are your typical wages, your earnings, unemployment earnings, benefits like Social Security, SSI, SSP, veterans benefits, cash assistance through the Department of Transitional Assistance. That self-employment piece, I think we might see a lot of that in this community, hopefully. Income from the business or a rental property. If you own a property that you are renting out, right, that the rental income would count as income towards your household, as well as dividends and interest from assets, right? So my paltry little savings account is earning 0.03% interest right now, which I think was like 6 cents last year. That counts as income. Okay. This list is also not meant to be all inclusive, right? There are many things that count as income, but again, just be honest with us and let us help navigate that. We will tell you, oh, that doesn't count. Or yes, that does count. And we're going to work through that. This we need to verify, that we're going to set aside. Just be forthcoming with us and we'll get there. All right, as far as assets go, an asset in its broadest terms is something that can be something of value that can be converted to cash. That bank account that you have might be numbers on a screen, but you can walk into a brick and mortar bank and actually take all of that cash out, right? So that's what an asset is. Some examples obviously are the bank accounts. If you do receive Social Security or SSI benefits and it comes on a direct deposit card, the balance of that card counts as an asset. Your pay apps, Venmo, Cash App, PayPal, Apple Pay, Apple Cash. I don't know why I keep screwing that one up. Apple Cash. Those are all assets as well. Any investments, stocks, bonds, those types of things, any real estate. It does not include things like your daily driver vehicle, personal jewelry, right? Engagement rings, wedding bands, jewelry that you wear, things that are sort of needed for day-to-day use, that's not included. Okay. All right, so let's talk about the time sensitivity of documents. We mentioned that the application period closes July 11th. The lottery is going to be July 31st. We're going to start processing applications in August, and we are looking forward to a mid-fall move-in. So time is of the essence. And I mentioned too that we are going to provide you with the list of documents, everything you need to bring with you when you come in for the interview. We'll give that to you a few times. Let's say you show up and you're like, darn, I forgot one pay stub. You're going to walk out of that interview with another list from us saying, here's what was missing. Please provide it to us within 5 business days. That is not a hard and fast deadline. That is to create the sense of urgency. And so everybody is on the same page as far as what the expectations are. If you can't make that, right, because you need to log in and print it out, whatever the situation is, let us know. Right? If we don't hear from you, again, we assume you're not interested anymore. And that happens more than you would think, unfortunately. So just communicate with us if you're having trouble getting it over to us or if you need an extension. If we don't hear from you, again, it may result in the denial of your application. But again, you have the opportunity to appeal, right? I got called out of state on a family emergency. Here you go. I'm really sorry. Those sorts of things, it happens. Life happens. So we get a lot of questions about how long will the process take? It's very individualized. It's going to depend on what your income is, what your assets are, sort of the process that we have to go through together. I've seen applications go from application to approval to move in within a few days if it's a very simple process. I've seen it take 6 weeks or longer. It just really depends on what we uncover as we go through the application process together. Once your application is approved, we schedule a tentative move-in date. And I say tentative because construction delays happen. Right? We don't like it. We don't want to admit it, but it does happen. So we have the best of intentions of getting people in as quickly as possible once the building opens. But if that gets delayed and the inspections are delayed, or we need to go back and the city says, oh, we need you to plant this one tree. I think there was an issue with curbs at one property. I don't even remember. But anyways, if there's delays, we may need to change the move-in date. We will notify you of that. We're not just going to go radio silent, right? Communication works 2 ways. If we say you can't make a deadline, communicate with us. Well, if our timeline changes, we have an obligation to you too, particularly if you are packing up that U-Haul as we speak. And by the nature of the program, the information that we collect has a timeline on it of 120 days. So if there are construction delays and we have you already approved, some of your paperwork may expire. We may have to do it over again. Just be patient. It's part of the process. In the end, it will be worth it. We can appreciate the frustration. It's, it can be frustrating for everybody, but it's just what we have to go through to welcome you into this really cool space, I promise. All right, so let's talk briefly about the apartment selection. I'm sorry, yes, please.
We made a mistake on our online application. Can we do another one?
Good question. So the question for anybody on Zoom was, if you made a mistake on the online application, can you do a new one? You can't, because it's going to warn you that you already submitted one, and that's okay, but you can change it. You just reach out to us. We can help you navigate that. And then I think there is also an online update form, but we'll get you taken care of. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so the application selection process, during your interview, we're gonna ask you about your preferences. Do you want a first floor unit? Do you want a third floor unit? Do you want to be far away from the elevator? Do you want to be close to the micro studios? Do you want to be away from the micro studios and the auditorium, right? We're gonna ask you what your preferences are, and we will do our best to accommodate them, but we can't guarantee them. I would say the exception is if you have like a mobility need or a sensory need. I talked about the mobility and sensory accessible units. Absolutely. That's not a preference. It's a requirement for you to enjoy the property. But your preferences as far as location, those sorts of things it's a preference. If you come out higher in the lottery sort, you're more likely to get your preference, right? But we'll do our best to be as accommodating as possible. The apartments are offered in the order of lottery preference. So if you are number one, you are going to get your preference of lottery placement, excuse me. We will offer a few different tour options. Once there is a model unit available to tour, we will invite you. You're welcome to come look at it. It may not be your specific apartment, but if you just want to see those quartz countertops that we're talking about, you want to see these wooden floors, the oversized windows. If you want to see it because you want to see an apartment before you commit to it, right? And you may walk into it and be like, oh, I don't like it. It's not what I'm looking for. We do offer that, as well as a tour of your specific units once we know what it is and once it's available and we have the lease signing all scheduled and ready. So it may happen the day of your lease signing, it may happen prior. We'll work with you on that, whatever works for you. But we do want you to see your specific apartment before you commit to a year-long lease with us. And then at the time of move-in, we do require security deposit and first month's rent. We understand that moving is expensive. We do offer payment plans for the security deposit. Okay, so again, we want to remove barriers. San Diego said it before, to being able to move into such a vibrant community. So what questions do you have that we maybe haven't answered already? And Megan, if there's anything in the chat, please speak up, or anybody who is on Zoom, feel free to take yourself off of mute and ask. Yes.
Yes, I was wondering if there's storage available to tenants, bikes, that kind of stuff, especially in the studio.
Yeah, good question. So for anybody on Zoom, the question was, is there any storage available for bikes, particularly if you have a studio apartment?
There are bike racks that will be outside, but there's not indoor storage areas.
We do have a question in the chat. Can I have a pet in the studio or apartment?
We are allowing pets in Hawthorne Lofts. Yes, there will be pet rules, pet restrictions, size, type, breed, number of animals, those sorts of things, but animals are allowed. Yes.
Are there asset limits or your 401k?
Good question. So there are not currently any asset limits. There is a HUD regulation that's been kicking around and has been continuously delayed for more than 2 years with that idea in mind. Everybody is waiting with bated breath. So right now, there are not currently any asset limitations. That added to that, just for clarity, that same rule that is proposing asset limitations excludes retirement accounts as assets. So that's a huge benefit, right? If they're going to do something like asset limitations, saying 401ks, IRAs are not counted towards that limit is fantastic. So the question was, are there asset limitations? The answer is there is not currently, but if that does come to fruition, that retirement accounts are excluded as assets.
And then one more follow-up. What if you will be turning 62, but you're not yet 62?
Good question. So you have to be 62 at the time that you're moving into the property. So correct, not the application. Yes, if you are currently 61, but will be turning 62, by all means.
Fantastic. Sorry for waiting.
Yeah. Yes.
What floor are the mix of 1, 2 and studios?
Good question. Hang on.
Basement.
It is a mix.
Yeah.
Yes, so on the garden level, we have studios, 1s and 2s. On the first floor, it's 1s and 2s. Megan's navigating back to that slide. Second floor is studios, 1s and 2s, and then the third floor is studios and 1s. So yes, it's a good, healthy mix, and I appreciate that concern, throwing all the studios down in the basement. Yes.
Which is, that would be to living space. Is that available in that area?
That's fantastic question. Let me just repeat it for our folks here on Zoom. The question was about parking. If there are 2 cars in the household, is there parking? Are there monthly parking spaces available in the neighborhood in that instance? Because the apartments have 1 parking pass at the Museum Place garage. And yes, there are other garages in the area that offer monthly rates. Yeah.
One, if you have a city of, if you are a resident of the city of Salem, yeah, as an actual stickers, so there would be street parking accessible to that. But,
That's a good point. I didn't think about that.
so I know their income, there is artists who does receive payments for work that they do, that is not consistent, but they do have, like, they work at a pizza shop. How do they, like, how does that work out? I know that was sort of part of the question before, but.
Yeah, fantastic question. So for anybody who couldn't hear, for an artist who maybe has a, a regular 9-to-5 job or regular income through, working at a pizza parlor or whatever the situation is, and then receives periodic income for commissions or their work as an artist, how that's calculated? Good question. So what we would look at is obviously the regular earnings would count towards the gross household income calculation. And then this goes back to being highly individualized, right? So if it is periodic, we would hope that you would have some sort of record of that for, call it, the last 6 or 12 months. And we're going to ask you if it's something that where it's really only happening maybe once a year and it's not recurring, we maybe wouldn't include it because non-recurring gifts or non-recurring sporadic things aren't always included. If it's something where it's not consistent, it's not every 6 weeks, it's not guaranteed, but it happens multiple times throughout the year based on the season, based on whatever the situation is, then we would gather as much information as we could and we would reasonably annualize it, right? If you are in the height of your season and right now you are cash flowing hard from your art, right? And in 6 weeks that it's going to stop because this is just how it is. The summertime is art fair season, and then the wintertime, maybe not so much. Then we're going to take a look at sort of your history and that ebb and flow and be reasonable about what your income is, and try to like annualize it to be a year-long amount. Was that helpful? Yes.
How many project-based subsidized units will you be?
Good question. So the question was how many project-based units, subsidized units will be in the building? It's a total of 10, 3 studios, 3 1-bedrooms, and 4 2-bedrooms. Actually, all of the 2-bedroom units in this community are project-based subsidized units. Good question. Yes. Megan, anything in the chat?
Nothing in the chat at this point. Does anyone want to take themselves off of mute and ask a question out loud? We invite you to do so.
Yes.
Different needs the artist preference. And maybe it sort of ties into what you just said about how there is, like, you recognize that there is an ebb and flow to like income and times of years. Is that also a factor in determining whether or not you need the artist preference? Like, does your art have to be happening at a certain frequency or within a certain phase of the timeline to make you an artist to turn around? Like, or is it like you have to have exhibited something or been in production for the last month or 6 months? You have to have gotten that education within the last year.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good question. So for anybody who couldn't hear, the question was about the artist preference and whether there's sort of a time restriction on it. Do you need to have had your art on view or for sale or have received that degree within a certain amount of time of applying in order to be eligible for the preference? Does that about summarize it? Is that something, San Diego, do you want to field
Yeah.
that?
I would say no. Like using myself as an example, like, you know, I got my bachelor's in 2012 in cultural anthropology. Those are skills that I'm still using today, even though the degree was, you know, acquired then. And then for like the Punta Bernard Museum, we have a mural program where we change out the murals every 2 years. Some artists participate in that almost every 2 years, but if they're only doing that one project every single year, that doesn't mean in the intervening months, they're not an artist. They just have this opportunity once every 2 years with us. So that would definitely not be like an hindrance at all, you know.
What else? Okay, well, if you have not already applied, please go online to livehawthornelofts.com, submit your application so that we can make sure to get you into the lottery. If you prefer to do a paper one, you have all the avenues in which to get a paper application. I believe we even have some here, right, tonight? We have some here for you to take with you if you don't want to fill it out right now. If you do, you can fill it out now. You can give it right back to us. If you do have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. You can get to us via our website, via the email address hawthornelofts@peabodyproperties.com, over the phone, whatever works best for you. Yes.
They have elevators there.
The question, are there elevators? Yes. Yep, there are elevators.
Accessibility, like the stairs and stuff like
Yes,
that.
yep.
Like the first.
Yep.
Imagine you have a choice. You make your choice first floor or garden or something if you had.
Right, so all 4 floors are elevator accessible, and then I think it was Jennifer San Diego said that the stage in the auditorium actually even has like a lift or a ramp to get into it. We are really committed to removing physical barriers for people, as well as removing those artistic barriers for
Yeah,
our artists.
yeah, the elevator, you can access the auditorium on the ground floor of the auditorium and the loft with the elevator. Mhm.
Did you indicate that on the application that you have mobility? Is that part of the?
Good question. Yeah, so the question was, do you need to indicate mobility needs on the application? It does ask the question. Yep, yeah. And mobility needs look different for everybody, right? So some people need a fully accessible apartment. Some people just need some reduced barriers. So again, when we talk about the individualized process, it's understanding what your needs are so that we can make sure that we're fitting those. Yeah. All right, well, thank you all so much for joining us. We look forward to this building opening this fall, and we hope to be completing applicant interviews with all of you in just a couple of months here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.